So, did the Denver Broncos lose out on Caleb Williams? This was a win for the Denver Broncos that definitely stirred up some controversy from a lot of people in Broncos country, because this win, putting the Denver Broncos now at 2-5, may have knocked us out of the Caleb Williams sweepstakes and knocked us out of contention for the #1 overall pick. In fact, we'll go ahead and look up the NFL draft order right now, because obviously the Carolina Panthers are still the worst team in football right now, and the Chicago Bears are the owners of their first-round pick. So according to Tankathon right here, the Chicago Bears, via the Carolina Panthers, hold the #1 overall pick. We'll come over here to scene 2 here. The Arizona Cardinals hold the #2 overall pick. Chicago Bears hold the #3 overall pick. And Denver's win in Chicago over the Bears currently has them at the #4 overall pick, along with a bunch of other 2-win teams down here as well. For those who are curious, Green Bay, who are now sitting at 2-4, would have the 7th overall pick if the season ended today. So right now, the Denver Broncos could realistically be completely out of both the Caleb Williams and the Drake May conversation, because you imagine that Chicago would probably go Caleb Williams #1 overall, and then Arizona, if they don't stick with Kyler Murray, they'll probably go with whoever's left over. If Arizona does stick with Kyler Murray and this record does indeed hold, then I strongly believe that they might consider trading down and trying to acquire more assets. Denver might be a team that could come up with them. But right now, if the season ended today, the Denver Broncos would be sitting at 2-5, and there's a chance that the top 2 quarterbacks in Caleb Williams and Drake May might be off the board. So then for the Denver Broncos, if you were really gun set on taking a quarterback with the #4 overall pick, if that's what you have, then you're probably going to be stuck picking between someone like a Michael Penix Jr., somebody of that nature. So I feel like the Denver Broncos have definitely got themselves in a little bit of an interesting position right now, given the fact that they've lost out on position to get the #1 overall pick. Prior to this, they were sitting pretty firmly at that #2 spot. But with an Arizona Cardinals loss today over the Seattle Seahawks, Chicago, they did win, however, against the Raiders, but obviously Denver would hold the quote-unquote tiebreaker there since they won their game against Chicago in Week 4. That is a loss for Denver that pretty firmly made me believe that they were never truly going to have a chance at getting Caleb Williams. I honestly thought that the Denver Broncos were going to always end up picking somewhere in this #4 to maybe #10 overall spot. And because of that, you might not be in a position to get a top quarterback. I know that's going to probably stress and upset a lot of members of Broncos country, but that's unfortunately where we are right now. That is just where the team is. So if the Denver Broncos are not in a position to get a top quarterback, then what do? We've got Garrett Shelton in the house saying, clickbait. What's going on, Garrett? Good to see you. If the Denver Broncos are picking somewhere in this 4 to 10 range, do you trade down? Do you try to target maybe a top offensive tackle prospect? I know the offensive tackle out of Penn State's gotten a lot of big-time buzz. Do you try to target maybe a Marvin Harrison Jr.? Do you try to maybe trade up with Arizona if they try to ride with Kyler Murray? If the Denver Broncos do indeed end up with this #4 overall pick, then that's going to lead to a lot of really interesting conversations going forward. But right now, I think it's been pretty clearly established that there are worse teams in the NFL than the Denver Broncos. And the Denver Broncos, like I've said before, players are never going to go out there and intentionally lose football games. And Sean Payton kind of proved that the coaches aren't going to do it either, because that last play there where the Broncos ran out the clock and ran around and Russ launched it out of bounds to run out the clock, I was a little worried about that play call, because I thought that there was a chance that they would have thrown it out of bounds and there still would have been 1 second left on the clock. That would have put Green Bay in field goal range. So if the Broncos had, by that play call, that honestly kind of made me question Sean Payton's intentions a little bit, if he was really attentive on winning that game. But then you think about games such as the Miracle at the Meadowlands, where if we would have punted, there would have been a chance of Green Bay returning it to the house and winning the game. So again, hindsight is 2020. The Denver Broncos did win that game. But when it comes to players are never going to tank. They're never going to intentionally make their film look bad just so their team can go out and draft their potential replacement. That's not what happens. So at the end of the day, the Denver Broncos, unless they truly had the least amount of talent in the NFL, which, yeah, they're bottom 3 in terms of talent on their roster. There's no doubt about that. But there are other teams out there that have very clearly shown that not only do they have less talent than the Denver Broncos, they're way worse coached than the Denver Broncos are. And that is why I truly believe that the Denver Broncos were never going to get the number 1 overall pick, and I wasn't going to get my hopes up to be in the Caleb Williams sweepstakes until we actually had that number 1 overall pick in our hands. Since that hasn't happened, right now, what I'm trying to focus on for this team is determining who is going to be a part of this team long term. I still think this team is entering a rebuild phase. I still think that guys such as Jerry Jeudy are going to be traded, but this win might have also signaled that the Denver Broncos could keep some players in the building, such as a Justin Simmons, who prior to this, I thought there was a strong chance that he could get shipped off to a team like the Philadelphia Eagles, for example. So that's kind of where the Denver Broncos are right now there. We've got